In the summer of 2050, there is an indescribable heat in the air. Lindsay sat in his small rental house less than 10 square meters, with the windows wide open, and even a silk scent could not be blown in. He stared at the old holographic projection device on the table, and the login interface of War Domain Mega was displayed on the screen, and he felt a little confused. This game is the most popular holographic virtual game at the moment. It is said that it can make people experience the pleasure of fighting that is no different from the actual ones, and players around the world are crazy. Unfortunately, ordinary people like him who have a monthly salary of stinging hard to eat can't afford even the most basic equipment, let alone show their skills in the game. I would have liked to get a top-level equipment. Lindsay muttered, his fingers knocking on the table unconsciously. He's just an ordinary game lover. He only watches live broadcasts and browses forums on weekdays, and occasionally rents low-end equipment in the internet bar. But every time he saw those great players killing one boss in the War Domain Yuan, it was so cool that his heart was like a cat's claws. At this moment, a rapid knocking sound came from the door, breaking the silence in the house. Lindsay was stunned and stood up to open the door. Outside the door was a man wearing a gray hoodie, wearing a pair of ink glasses on his face, looking mysterious. The other party was carrying a black metal box in his hand. The surface of the box was engraved with some incomprehensible symbols, emitting a sense of pressure that could not be described. "Are you Lindsay?" The man's voice was low, with a bit of mechanical indifference. It's me, who are you?" Lindsay snatched his eyebrows and quickly read in his brain whether he had offended anyone recently or had owed any debts. "I had no impression at all." The man didn't say much, and just passed the box over. His temperament was as dull as if he was talking about the weather. "This is for you. Don't ask where I come from or who I am. I've read the instructions in it, don't use them." After saying that, he turned around and walked as fast as if he was about to reincarnate. "Hey! Wait!" Lindsay shouted in his arms, holding the box, but the man had disappeared from the road. He lowered his head and looked at the box in his hand, his heart was up and down. At this age, who would give something for nothing? Isn't it a new trick? But the box is heavy and it feels like a fake when it feels like a icy look. Back in the room, he placed the box on the table and carefully opened the lock. With a slight click, the box is bouncing, and there is a holographic projection battle equipment lying inside, not the low-end goods commonly seen on the market, but the top-level model, with a blue light embedded on the streamlined helmet, and the connection line looks like an art product. There is also a thin book of instructions next to it, with only one line of words on the cover: War Domain Element Ultimate Access. Lindsay's heartbeat accelerated instantly, and his hands were shaking a little. This equipment is worth a lot just by looking at the appearance, and it may be more expensive than the rent for his dilapidated rental house for a year. He swallowed and flipped through the instructions. In addition to the basic operating guide, there was also a handwritten warning: after access, the game results will be tied with the actual situation. The rewards can be seen and the risks will be borne by themselves. The reward, is it now? Lindsay muttered these few words, and his brain buzzed. The War Domain Domestics does have a bonus system, but they are all virtual coins or equipment in the game. How can there be any explanation that can affect the reality? Is this explanation written the same as the real one? Is it a gimmick created by the equipment dealer? Or, what's the difference between this thing? Curiosity finally fought against the hesitation. Lindsay gritted his teeth and decided to try it. He put on his helmet and connected the equipment. With a low voice, his vision suddenly became dark. Then, countless light spots gathered in front of your eyes, forming a huge blue vortex, and the mechanical sound of the system was raised around your ears. "Welcome to the War Domain Metagenesis, the player's identity is confirmed." After confirming, the limit mode is activated. Extreme mode? What is this? Lindsay did not react yet, and his body suddenly sank, as if he was pulled by something. When he opened his eyes again, he was already standing on a deserted battlefield, surrounded by broken buildings and scorched land, and the air was filled with the smell of nitros. He looked down and was wearing a light battle armor, holding an energy knife in his hand, and the blade was still flashing with a dark blue light. This is too real. Lindsay couldn't help but exclaimed. He pinched his arm, and the touch was as clear as it was, and even the sound of explosions everywhere and the vibration of the ground could be felt. He has played a low-end holographic game, but that experience is not the same level as it is now. This equipment is simple as pulling people into another world. At this moment, the communication device around his ears responded with a prompt sound, followed by a crisp female voice. "Hey, newbie, are you fucking me in a daze? The enemy is coming soon, ready to fight." Lindsay was stunned, and looked around, and saw a girl in a combat vest slamming his hand at him. Her hair was tilted into horsetails, she had a pair of data lenses on her face, and she held a stool-shaped end in her hand, knocking on something quickly. "Who are you?" Lindsay asked, jogging over, and his heart was still adapting to everything. The girl glanced at him, her temperament was a little impatient. "I am Xiaorua, your temporary teammate. The system assigned us to a team. The current mission is to hold on to this point. The enemy's unmanned group will arrive in 3 minutes. Will you use the knife in your hand? If not, I'm very nervous, I don't want to be dragged by you." It should be." Lindsay slapped his head in awkward manner. He has practiced a few games in the low-end game, but this truly extreme environment still makes him a little scared. Xiaorua rolled her eyes and said no more, lowered her head and continued to operate the final. "I am responsible for data analysis and combat support, and the battle depends on you. The enemy has no humans to detect hot imaging. Don't run around, hide behind the cover, and wait until they get close before taking action. Do you understand?" "I understand." Lindsay pointed his head and felt a little drumming in his heart. He squatted behind a broken corner of the wall, held the energy knife tightly, his ears full of his heartbeat. The far sky gradually emitted a low buzzing sound, and several unmanned aircraft formed a team of trainers, approaching, and the red indicator lights on the machine were particularly dazzling under the dark sky. "Here!" Xiaorua reminded in a low voice, and at the end, he marked the weak positions of the enemy at the end. "Aim at their power core, cut down the knife and don't use the handshake." Lindsay took a deep breath and felt sweating in his palms. He waited for the unmanned machine to approach the 10 meters and suddenly rushed out from the cover. The energy knife drew a blue light, slashing straight towards the power core of the nearest unmanned machine. With a harsh explosion, the unmanned aircraft disintegrated on the spot, and the fragments were filled with heat and waves. "Fuck beautifully!" Xiaorua shouted in the communication device, and finally got a little praise in his language. "Don't stop, continue." Lindsay gritted his teeth and solved 3 unmanned aircraft in succession, but was soon suppressed by the other party's firepower. The unmanned aircraft group began to fight back, and lasers flew over his armor, and a small pit was blown out of the ground. He flipped in and hid in his body, his heart pounding, feeling that he might be hanging off at any time. "Newcomers, don't fight hard." Xiaorua's voice sounded again. "I cracked their communication frequency, and the interference signal has been issued. Let's retreat to the second defense line now." Lindsay didn't think much about it and heard the instructions to retreat to the rear. The two of them fought and retreated all the way, and finally defended the last line of defense under the pursuit of the unmanned group. When the system prompted the mission was completed sounded, Lindsay sat on the ground, gasping heavily, and sweating all over his body. "It's okay, I don't drag my back." Xiaorua walked over and gave him a bottle of virtual energy drinks, and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. "It's good to be able to survive in the first time in the extreme mode." "What is the limit mode?" Lindsay took the drink and took a sip. He felt that his fatigue instantly decreased a lot. Xiaorua pushed the eyeglasses, with a puzzle in his language. "Don't you know? The limit mode is the most difficult gameplay in the domain element. Only a few top-level equipment can unlock it. Each link can get special rewards, and it is said, these rewards can even affect reality." "Is the impact real?" Lindsay was shocked and remembered the warning in the instruction manual. He was about to ask again, but the mechanical sound of the system suddenly erupted. Congratulations to the player for completing the first-time trial. The reward has been released. Award content: body power enhancement, real synchronization, validity period, permanent. Can the body strengthen? Really synchronized? Lindsay was stunned, his brain full of questions. What is real synchronization? Is it hard to really change this game? Xiaorua looked at his expression and glanced at his eyebrows. Your equipment is not simple. The reward can actually enhance your body. I have heard this kind of remark, but I have never seen it true. Are you sure to continue playing? Lindsay was silent for a while, and his brain became a group. He thought of his life that was so ordinary that he could not be more ordinary, and those dreams that could never be realized. If this game can really change reality, even if there's only one possibility, he wants to try it. I'll continue. He raised his head, his eyes a little more calm. What's next? Xiaorua stared at him for a few seconds, and finally pointed. Okay, since you are not afraid, let's come together. The next thing is the Ruins Palace. The enemy is 10 times stronger than this one. Let's talk about it after you are ready. When the two looked at each other, there seemed to be an indescribable tacit understanding in the air. Lindsay stood up and held the energy knife tightly. The sky far away darkened again, and the new battle seemed to kick off at any time. At the same time, in a secret data layer of the war domain, an ID named Fast Walker was quietly logged in, and a line of text was displayed on the screen. The target player has activated the limit mode and the monitoring has begun. In another deeper system core, a program named Shadowrunner K7 began to move, and the red data stream gathered into a pair of cold eyes, locking Lindsay's player ID. The real challenge in the war zone just began. Lindsay stood at the entrance of the ruins. The ground under his feet was filled with gravel and twisted steel tendons, and a heavy metal smell was filled with the air. He lowered his head and checked the energy knife in his hand. The blue light on the blade flashed slightly, as if he was ready to tear something apart at any time. Xiaorua next to her was squatting on the ground, adjusting her stool-like end, staring at the screen with her eyes focused on her eyes, and her fingers quickly tapping. The data about this is a bit strange, Xiaorua's eyebrows, his voice coming from the communications, bringing a sense of anxiety. The map structure of the ruined palace is dynamically changed, and the system reorganizes the path every few minutes. In addition to the usual mechanical guards, the enemy also has hidden traps and interference signals, so we have to be careful. Movement changes? Isn't that saying that the map will turn into a maze version of hide and seek at any time? Lindsay smiled bitterly, trying to relieve the tight atmosphere. He had just experienced the unmanned attack of the first-party juncture. Although he was reluctant to do so, the real pressure in his heart still made him feel thrilled. Now that he heard this problem was even more difficult, he felt a little bit moaning. Xiaorua raised his head and glanced at him, and a hint of a nervous smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It's almost the same. But I have downloaded the core algorithm of Mian Palace. Although I can't completely predict map changes, I can warn you at least a few minutes in advance. Remember, don't run around and listen to me. Okay, I'll hear you. Lindsay pointed his head, held the energy knife tightly, took a deep breath, and walked into the entrance of the mystery. The sound of his footsteps reverberated between the empty ruins, and the surrounding high walls seemed to collapse at any time, making people unable to breathe. The sky above was covered by heavy cloud layers, and occasionally there were a few red flashes, as if the system was warning them something. After walking for a few steps, Xiaoru's voice suddenly became quick. Left, hide. Lindsay subconsciously heard a bang sound, and a laser beam brushed his shoulder and shot through, burning a charred hole directly on the wall. His heart beat sharply, and when he turned around, several mechanical guards slowly floated behind the corner of the wall, with red indicator lights on his body, as if he was locking his target. Damn, is it coming soon? Lindsay gritted his teeth and quickly hid behind a broken concrete. The mechanical guard firepower is much stronger than the first-rate unmanned aircraft. The laser beam is almost continuously slammed, so he can't lift his head at all. Don't fight hard, I'm interfering with their aiming system. Xiaoruo's voice came from the communication device, carrying a hint of anxiety. Wait for my signal, then push it to their side wings. The power core is in the lower left corner, cut it down. Lin Zhe clicked his head, held his breath, and his ears were filled with bursting sounds of laser beam hitting the middle wall. A few seconds later, Xiaoruo finally shouted, "Now!" He suddenly rushed out from his cover, and his body was almost gliding against the ground. The energy knife drew a blue light in the air, accurately hitting the core of the recent mechanical guardian power. With a harsh explosion, the guards disintegrated on the scene and the fragments were 4 times. One is done. Lin Zhe gasped and quickly rolled behind another cover. But the remaining few mechanical guards have adjusted their shape and have more firepower, and the laser beam has almost blocked all of his moving routes. Xiaoruo, are there any tricks? I can't stop it. Lin Zhe shouted, and a thread had been wiped off his shoulders. The protection value of the war armor dropped violently on the system interface. Don't worry, I'm cracking their fire control system. Okay, the interference signal is released, their attack will pause for 3 seconds for a short time, run now. Xiaoruo's voice fell, and Lin Zhe felt that the firepower around him suddenly started. Without thinking too much, he gritted his teeth and pushed out his cover, and the energy knife continued to slash out and slash the remaining 2 guards. After the battle ended, Lin Zhe sat down against the wall, gasping heavily, and sweating all over his body. Xiaoruo walked over, and finally there was a bunch of data on the screen. She pushed the mirror and praised her with a small amount of praise in her language. It's okay, I don't have to pay for my interference signal. But this just started, and the road ahead is even harder. It's even harder to leave. Lin Zhe wiped his sweat and smiled bitterly. He looked at the system interface with his head down. The durability of the war armor had dropped by 1/3, and the energy knife was only half of the charge. If the enemy behind him is stronger, he really doesn't know if he can continue to snatch it. At this moment, the ground in the Misty Palace suddenly moved, and the walls at the distance began to move slowly, making a deep friction sound. Xiaoruo's final shot immediately issued a warning. She looked down and her face became even more difficult. The map restructuring has begun. We have to look for the next path, otherwise we will be trapped in a dead end. The 2 of them dared not to delay and quickly advanced towards the safe route marked at the end. The environment in the mystical palace is becoming more and more strange, and some strange symbols begin to appear on the wall, such as some kind of encryption code, and a low-frequency buzzing sound is irritated in the air. Lin Zhe always felt unfavorable, but he couldn't tell where there was a problem. After about 10 minutes of leaving, they finally arrived at an open area, with a huge circular platform in the center, on which was a core device with red light floating. Xiaoruo stopped and stared at the device, his voice lowered. This should be the central control core of the mystery. If you destroy it, you can stabilize the map structure. Our road will be much easier. What are you waiting for? Go straight up. Lin Zhe held the tight energy knife and prepared to rush it. But Xiaoruo grabbed him and slammed his head. Don't urge, there must be a protection mechanism around this. I'll scan it first, you'll be on the side. Lin Zhe pointed his head, stood aside, and looked around. Sure enough, within a few seconds, the ground around the platform suddenly cracked, and several hidden turrets rose slowly, and the muzzles were in line with their direction. At the same time, a cold mechanical sound came into the air, warning, those who are not authorized to access should leave immediately, otherwise the extreme mode will be activated. It's almost the same pattern. It's not very friendly to hear. Lin Zhe swallowed, and his hand holding the knife tightened unconsciously. Xiaoruo bit her lip, and the data flow at the end was flying at a rapid speed. I'm cracking the control protocol of the turret, give me a minute. Don't let them fire. As soon as the voice fell, the turret's instructions turned red, and the energy began to accumulate energy, which seemed to be not intended to give them a minute. Damn, I'll die 8 times in 1 minute. Lin Zhe concludes, quickly rushes to the nearest turret, and slashes hard on the energy knife. But as soon as the blade hit the surface of the turret, it was opened by a layer of energy protection shield, which made his tiger's mouth numb. Shield? Is this thing still on guard? Lindsay gritted his teeth and slashed several times, but the shield strap was not moving. The energy storage of the turret has been completed, and the first energy cannon shot directly at him. He flipped over and barely hid, and a big pit was blown out of the ground, and the heat waves came over. Xiaorua, how long will it take? I can't hold it anymore. Lindsay shouted, with a little hope in his voice. If you hold on for another 10 seconds, I'll be done. Xiaorua's voice became anxious, and his fingers were knocking on the ends so hard that it was almost igniting. Lindsay bit his teeth tightly, thrust his head to another fort, and used his body to attract firepower, and tried to fight for Xiaorua to get time. The energy gun connected to his war armor, and the protection value on the system interface dropped wildly, and the warning sound made his ears hurt. Just when he felt that he was about to be unable to hold on, Xiaorua finally shouted, "It's done. The shield is lifted, cut it down." When Lindsay heard this, as if he had a chicken blood, the energy knife burst out with a strong blue light, which hit the core of the turret. With a sound of explosion, the fort was reported on the ground and the debris was filled with 4 pieces. The remaining several turrets also lost their power under Xiaoru's interference. The 2 of them jointly destroyed all the protection devices and finally came to the center of the platform. Lindsay looked at the floating core device and panted, "How to do this?" "Just smash it." Xiaorua slammed the head, walked to the device, and connected to the terminal. "No, you will touch the self-destruction program if you come. I have to manually turn off its defense system, and then you can do it," she said, her fingers flying quickly on the terminal, and a bunch of complicated codes were displayed on the screen. At this moment, the air around the platform suddenly distorted, and a low and cold voice echoed from all directions, "Silly players, do you think you can easily touch the core?" Lindsay felt nervous and turned around. He saw a black virtual shadow floating in the air, with red data scattering on his body, like the incarnation of some advanced AI. What kind of ghost thing is this? Lindsay held the energy knife tightly and took out his defensive posture. Xiaorua's face also became extremely difficult to see, and she said in a low voice, "This may be the guardianship procedure of the mystery. Be careful, its fighting power is not something we can resist." The movie made a low laugh, and the sound seemed to be directly diamonding into the brain. "I am part of the projection of the Shadow Runner K7, responsible for clearing any threats to destroy the system's balance. You have crossed the line." "Over the line?" "We just wanted to get over it." Lindsay gritted his teeth and tried to delay time. He secretly glanced at Xiaorua, seeing that she was still cracking the core device with all her might, and knew in his heart that he had to fight for her. "Don't you?" Naive thoughts. The projection of K7 raised his hand, and a huge long spear of energy condensed in the air, pointing directly to Lindsay. "You can't bear the price of the rewards through the reward. Accept it to the end." As the voice fell, the long spear of energy stabbed towards Lindsay suddenly, so fast that it was almost impossible to see the spine clearly. Lindsay instinctively pressed the knife frame, but the huge impact force directly shocked him and hit the wall beside the platform. The health value on the system interface instantly dropped a lot. "Lindsay!" Xiaorua was shocked and turned to look at him, his eyes full of anxiety. "I'm fine, continue to crack." Lindsay gritted his teeth and stood up, feeling that his 5 internal organs were surging. He knew he wasn't AK-7's opponent, but at least he had to hold it down, otherwise they would have to stay here. The projection of the K7 made a sneer, and the long spear of energy condensed again, and the firepower was fully open toward Lindsay. Lindsay tried his best to avoid it, and the energy knife rushed to force the next few attacks, but every collision made his arms numb, and the durability of the war armor was almost perfect. Just when he was about to be unable to hold on, Xiaorua finally shouted, "It's done. The core defense is lifted, now take action." Lindsay heard this, and suddenly flipped over and avoided the K7's attack, and hit the core device, and the energy knife slashed it with all his strength. With a harsh sound of shattering, the core device burst out with a strong light, which then collapsed completely and the platform began to vibrate violently. The projection of the K7 made a roar of anger, and its figure began to become blurred. You will pay for this." Before the words finished, its figure disappeared completely, leaving only a dead silence. Lindsay sat on the ground, gasping heavily, feeling like he had walked away from the ghost gate. Xiaorua walked over and his face turned pale, but his eyes were a little more determined. "We succeeded, the map structure was stable, and the road to the next area was opened." Success is success, but what is this K7? What does it mean when it comes to the price? Lindsay pointed his eyebrows, and he was puzzled by a bad feeling in his heart. He thought of the first-party general reward. The effect of body enhancement actually made him feel much more relaxed in reality, but at the same time, he always felt that something was changing quietly. Xiaorua slammed the head and pushed the eyeglasses. "I don't know either, but I have checked some data. K7 may be the core guardianship program of the system, specializing in players in extreme mode. The price it says may have to do with the corresponding awards. We have to be careful, these awards may be really problematic." At this moment, the mechanical sound of the system resounded again. "Congratulations to the player for completing the mid-segment trial of the Ruins Palace. The reward has been released. Award content, real memory enhancement, optional application, validity period, permanent. Warning, the use of the award may cause unknown consequences. Will it be immediately released? Is the memory enhancing?" Lindsay was stunned for a moment, looked at Xiaorua, his eyes filled with confusion. "What does this mean? Can you change the memory?" Xiaorua glanced at her eyebrows and shook her head. "I haven't heard of this kind of reward. The unknown consequences mentioned by the system is not very good. Do you decide, or not?" Lindsay was silent for a while, and his brain became a group. Memory is very intimate to hear. If he can remember more or recall some key details, he may be able to uncover the secrets behind the game. But at the same time, K7's warning and system prompts made him feel angry. If this prize really has a price, can he bear it? Not to see it now, Lindsay gritted his teeth and made a decision. "I will tell you when I figure out the details of this game. I don't want my brain to be messed up." Xiaorua pointed at the head, and there was a little more conviction in his eyes. "A clever choice. Next, we have to go to the deepest part of the mystery, where there should be an entrance to the next. However, since the K7 appeared once, we will definitely come to find trouble later, so be prepared." Lindsay stood up, held the energy knife tightly, and looked at the red light hidden deep in the mystery. His heart was both tight and somewhat anticipated. The truth of the game, the price of the prize, and the real purpose of the K7, these questions are like a group of mists, covering his heart. But no matter what, he has come to this point and has no reason to retreat. Xiaorua smiled, and following behind him, the figures of the two disappeared into the depths of the mystery. At the same time, an ID named Fast Walker flashed again on the data level of the domain element, and a line of text was displayed on the screen. "The target player has passed the mid-segment trial, and the potential evaluation has been improved. Continue to guide, and the core secret is exposed to be activated when the countdown is exposed." Lindsay and Xiaorua's figures were still hidden in the depths of the ruins. The walls around them were filled with strange symbols. The low-frequency buzzing sounds in the air became more and more harsh, as if the system was warning them not to go deeper. Lindsay held the energy knife, his palms were covered in sweat. Although he had just destroyed the central control core and stabilized the map structure, the uneasiness in his heart did not decrease at all. Although the projection of the K7 disappeared, the sentence before it left, "You will pay for it," kept reminiscing in the brain, like a shadow that could not be shaken off. The deepest part of the mystery ahead, Xiaorua's voice came from the communications, carrying a burst of fatigue. "The end shows that there is a data point there, which should be the entrance to the next. However, the data flow is a bit abnormal, and there may be advanced protection procedures in place." "It's another protection procedure." Lindsay sighed and smiled bitterly. "Why do you feel like this game is not going to let someone get over it? The K7 guy will appear again, right?" Xiaorua pushed the lens and his language became more solemn. "It's hard to say. The projection of K7 is only part of it, and the real core program may still be hidden deep in the system. If the data points are really a key to the relationship, then the probability of it appearing is quite high. We have to make the worst plan. The two of them said no more, their pace accelerated and they walked along the end marker towards the deep corner of the palace. The more you go, the more you get, the environment becomes more and more strange. The symbols on the wall begin to flow slowly, as if they are alive. The buzzing sound in the air has also become a continuous low-key language, unable to hear the specific content, but it makes people's skin numb. Lindsay's heart was drumming, and he always felt that his eyes were staring at them in the dark, but when he turned around, he found nothing. After walking for about a minute, they finally came to a huge underground cavity, with a data point flashing with the light of the blue floating in the center, like a certain energy core, and countless small light points around them, like a data flowing at a high speed. Below the day is a circular platform, with symbols similar to those on the wall, emitting an indescribable sense of pressure. That's it, Xiaorua stopped, looked at the end with a low voice. The encryption level at the data point is higher than the central control core, and I need some time to crack it. You are standing by, don't let anything get close. Okay, you're dedicated to yours. Lindsay pointed his head, held the tight energy knife, and stood around the platform and stared around. The hollow is so quiet that it is scary, only the slight buzzing sound that comes out when the data is moving, striking regularly like a heartbeat. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down, but the uneasiness in his heart became stronger and stronger. Sure enough, after a few minutes, the hollow air suddenly distorted, and a cold mechanical sound echoed from all directions. If you are not authorized to visit, stop the operation immediately, otherwise the start will eventually lead to a close agreement. Lindsay felt nervous. When he turned around, he saw that the light spots around the data suddenly accelerated and condensed into a huge black shadow. His figure was taller than the K7 projection seen on the platform before. The red data scattered on his body almost dyed the entire cavity. Damn it, come again. Lindsay gritted his teeth and took out his defensive posture. The blue light of the energy knife looked particularly weak in the dark. He turned his head and looked at Xiaorua, seeing that she was still trying to crack the stage, and her fingers quickly hit the end, with sweat all over the head. Lindsay, hold it up. It will take me at least 5 minutes. Xiaorua's voice came from the communication device, carrying a hurried look. This is the core projection of the K7. The fighting power is much stronger than before. Don't fight hard and avoid it. 5 minutes, I'll try. Lindsay swallowed, feeling the pressure pressing on his shoulders like a mountain. The core projection of the K7 raised his hand and a huge energy blade condensed from the air. The red light on the blade was flashing, as if it could split a person in 2.5 at any time. It didn't say much, and rushed towards Lindsay directly, so fast that it could hardly see the spine clearly. Lindsay instinctively flipped and dodged, and the huge energy blade slammed on the platform. A huge hole suddenly broke into the ground, and the fragments were 4 times, which made his ears buzz. He gritted his teeth and stood up, quickly rushed to the other side of the platform, trying to open the distance, but the K7's attack did not give him any chance to breathe. The giant blade continued to slam, and each stroke brought destructive power, forcing him to slam it with sway. Xiaorua, how long will it take? I'm so quick. Lindsay shouted in a panting. Most of the protection value of the war armor had dropped, and the red warning marks on the system interface kept flashing. Hold on for another 2 minutes. I'm about to crack it to the core. Xiaorua gritted his teeth and responded, his voice full of anxiety. Lindsay bit his teeth tightly, and he thrust his skin to the side of the K7. The energy knife slashed at its shadow. But when the blade touched the other party, it was opened by a red energy shield, which made his tiger's mouth numb. Silly player, do you think you can hurt me? K7's voice was cold and mocking, and the giant blade shot out again. This time, it hit Lindsay's war armor directly. The huge impact force smashed him into the empty wall, and his health was instantly at its lowest point. Lindsay! Xiaorua was shocked and turned to look at him, his eyes filled with worry. But the movement in her hand did not stop, and the data flow on the end of the screen finally moved faster. I'm okay. Lindsay gritted his teeth and got up, feeling his 5 internal organs surround, and the warning sound of the system made his ears hurt. He knew that he would not have been able to hold it for long, but Xiaorua had not completed the cracking, so he couldn't just fall down. He took a deep breath, stood up straight, held the energy knife tightly, and was ready to face the next attack. At this moment, a low and familiar voice suddenly emerged from the depths of the void. Young player, your courage is worthy of praise, but you cannot fight the system by relying solely on fire. Lindsay was stunned, and after looking at the sound, he saw a blurred figure floating from the darkness, with a faint green light emitting on his body, like a projection of a certain incarnation of Data. Is it you, the Void Walker? Lindsay recognized the other party, feeling both surprised and confused. This mysterious instructor only sent him a few times at the critical moment before, and never really showed up. Now he suddenly appears. What do you wanna fuck? The Void Walker did not answer directly, and his voice was low and calm. The K7 is the guardian of the system, and its power comes from the core data level of the war zone. Your weapon cannot really harm it unless you can touch its essence, the weakness of the data. The weakness of data? What does it mean? Lindsay gasped and tried to delay time. The projection of the K7 also seemed to notice the appearance of the Void Walker. The attack paused for a moment, and the red data flow began to gather towards the Void Walker, as if trying to lock his position. There is a loophole in its core data flow. Whenever it launches a full-strength attack, the shield will briefly expose a frequency rift. Grab that moment and use your energy knife to interfere with its data structure. The Void Walker's voice was still calm, as if he was not worried about the threat of the K7 at all. But remember, this is the ultimate mode. You only have one chance. If you miss it, there is no second time. Lindsay felt nervous when he heard this, and quickly passed the other person's words in his brain. Frequency crack? This sounds like a hidden mechanism in the game, but he has never heard of this kind of playing style. Moreover, the attack speed of K7 is so fast, how could he accurately grasp that moment? Don't listen to his nonsense. The sound of K7 suddenly rose, with a burst of anger. The Void Walker is just a defection program of the system. His words will only bring you to a destruction. As he said, it slammed the giant blade again, and the red energy waves rushed towards Lindsay and the Void Walker at the same time. Lindsay gritted his teeth and flipped away, and his brain formed a group. He didn't know that he shouldn't believe in the Void Walker, but the current situation could no longer be thought of. If he drags on, he will have to stay here before Xiaorua cracks it. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth and decided to take a chance. Xiaorua, are you ready? I want to try a new way of playing. Lindsay shouted, staring at the K7's movements. Give me another 30 seconds. Xiaorua's voice almost roared, and his fingers knocked on the end so hard that it was almost igniting. Lindsay pointed his head, took a deep breath, and hit the front of the K7. The energy knife continued to rush out, and the test pirated the other party to launch a full-scale attack. Looking for death. K7 was indeed angry, and the red light on the giant blade was flourishing, and a huge energy wave condensed, smashing towards Lindsay in front. Lindsay's heart beats, his eyes fixed on the other party's shield, trying to capture the frequency cracks described by the vacuum walker. Just as the energy wave was about to hit, he finally saw a tiny blue wave pattern flashing across the surface of the shield, like a short and cracked trace of the data flow. It's right now! Lindsay roared, and his body suddenly avoided the energy wave from the side, and the energy knife stabbed the wave with all his strength. At the moment when the blade collided with the shield, a line of prompts suddenly popped up on the system interface. The data interference was successful, and the shield frequency collapsed. The K7's virtual sounded a harsh scream, and the body began to twist violently, and the red data flow scattered everywhere, as if it had lost control. Fuck beautifully. The Void Walker's voice sounded again, with a slight praise. Its core data has been exposed, destroy it now. Without thinking much, Lindsay gritted his teeth and rushed to the core position of the K7. The energy knife continued to slash out, and each stroke brought his last force. With a huge explosion, the K7's shadow disintegrated suddenly, turning into countless red light spots and dissipated into the air, and the void finally returned to silence. It's done. Lindsay sat on the ground, gasping heavily, feeling like he had walked away from the ghost gate. He turned to look at the Void Walker, thinking about something, but the other party's figure had begun to become blurred, as if it would disappear at any time. Your path is not over yet, player. The Void Walker's voice was low and meaningful. The truth of the reward is at the core level of the next one. Remember, the boundary between reality and virtuality has never been as simple as you think. After speaking, his figure disappeared completely, leaving only a dead silence. This guy is always mysterious. Lindsay sighed, slammed his head, and turned to look at Xiaorua. The other party finally completed the cracking, and the light spots around the data began to scatter, revealing a blue light path leading to the next. It's done. Xiaorua wiped his sweat and turned to Lindsay, his eyes full of fatigue but also a little excited. Did you fuck K7? I was busy cracking it, but I couldn't see clearly. Please be strong, I'll help you with a little bit. Lindsay stood up with a wry smile, pointing to the direction where the Void Walker disappeared. That guy came out again to give me a reminder, otherwise I would have hung up. Xiaorua glanced at her eyebrows and pushed her eyeglasses. I have never found the source of the data from this guy, like the ghost in the system. Since he helped you, I might really know something. However, we have to be careful, his purpose may not be the same as ours. I can't care about that much, Lindsay gasped, holding the energy knife tightly, and looking at the blue light path in front of him. Since the road is open, we will continue to walk. I must understand the truth about the reward. Xiaorua clicked the head, and the two of them looked at each other and walked into the light road. With a strong sense of dizziness, the vision became dark again, and the mechanical sound of the system was reflected on the ears. Congratulations to the player for completing the final trial of the Ruins Palace. The reward has been released. Award content, real-life interference, limited use, validity period, 24 hours. Warning, the use of the award will cause irreversible consequences. Will it be immediately revealed? Does the fate interfere? Lindsay was stunned for a moment, and a strong sense of anxiety surged in his heart. This award is even more impressive than previous physical energy and memory enhancement, but the system's warning made him feel angry. What does irreversible consequence mean? Don't rush to use it, Xiaorua said in a low voice, full of worry. The description of this award is too vague. We need to figure out its specific effect first. The next link is the final level of the domain element. After the link, it should be able to access the core data of the system and decide not to go back then. Lindsay clicked the head and put down the urge in his heart. He chose it very slowly. As the darkness on the light path spreads, they find themselves standing in an invisible virtual space, surrounded by countless floating fragments, as dazzling and dangerous as a galaxy. Far away, a huge golden data core spiraled and radiated with a heart-wrenching light. That should be the core of the final link, Xiaorua said in a low voice, eventually showing a bunch of complicated data streams. All the secrets of the domain element may be hidden there. However, the protection procedure is definitely stronger than the K7, so we have to prepare for it. Lindsay held the energy knife tightly and looked at the golden core far away. His heart was both tight and somewhat anticipated. The real and virtual boundary between the prize, and the truth behind the Void Walker and the K7, are like a group of mists, huddling over his heart. But no matter what, he has come to this point and has no reason to retreat. Let's go, he said softly, with a sudden decision in his voice. No matter what is ahead, I'll see how big the secret this game is hidden. Xiaorua smiled, and following him, the figures of the two disappeared into the galaxy of fragments, heading towards the final core.